Hello and welcome back to Bridge the Gap. I am your host, Nikki Steinhauer, and today I want to start off with a little poem. But before we begin, I just want to give a courtesy that this episode I will be speaking just a little bit more slow than I normally do. There's a lot of information that will be presented in this episode, and unless you're from New Jersey and you can follow a story at a million miles an hour, which most people aren't, I'm going to be speaking more slow so that you don't get left behind and you're able to follow along. Now, if you are from New Jersey and talking fast is your normal, go ahead and find that playback speed button and increase it so that way you don't get annoyed and don't get exhausted of the conversation. Okay, with all of that out of the way, let us begin with our poem. This is a poem that is called A Poem of Resilience and Faith, and it says, in the quiet whispers of the night, when shadows loom and spirits fight, remember this, hold firm and true. The path you tread is meant for you. When doubts arise like stormy seas, and courage wavers like autumn leaves, trust in the source that's deep within, for strength and hope are bound to win. In every heart a light resides, a beacon bright through darkest tides. Believe in self, in dreams you weave, and in the divine always believe. The journey's long, though paths may bend. Each step you take, the world transcends. With faith as guide and trust as key, the stars align for destiny. So lift your eyes, embrace the dawn, for every night a day is born. Keep holding on, stay true and brave. With love and faith, the soul is saved. Having gone through so much in my life, I had to learn to rely a lot on my intuition without second guessing myself. I understand now that intuition is very closely tied to the brain's survival mechanisms. When we are in fight or flight mode, the brain rapidly prioritizes that rapid decision making and threat detection, mainly relying on subconscious processing. So, research in neuroscience has shown that intuition is often the result of the brain processing information subconsciously. This is why people in high stress situations often feel something is wrong before they can articulate it. They can pick up on those energetic vibes in the room. The amygdala, a part of the brain involved in emotional processing, becomes hyperactive during fight or flight mode. And this enhances our ability to detect danger and make split-second decisions. So let me just touch on the amygdala for just a moment. Scientifically, the amygdala is crucial for processing fear, threats, and social emotional cues. When damage to the amygdala occurs, it can lead to impaired recognition of fear and deceit, reduced emotional reactivity, and altered social behaviors. So people with an amygdala lesion, they may struggle to detect fear in other people's faces and have difficulty interpreting social threats such as lies or manipulation. This is especially relevant today when our sense of danger often means social exclusion or betrayal or deceit rather than physical harm, how we used to survive. Amygdala damage blunts unconscious emotional responses, making it harder to sense subtle social threats or dishonesty. And people with amygdala damage may misjudge trustworthiness, making them more vulnerable to manipulation in modern social environments. So in the modern world, the amygdala helps us detect not just physical threats, but also social dangers like deceit, exclusion, and manipulation. And damage to this area just really impairs our ability to read the room or feel those energies and those vibrations and be able to protect ourselves from non-physical threats. So when we speak about the amygdala in the spiritual realm, many spiritual traditions view the amygdala as part of the emotional brain, which is essential for intuition and energetic discernment. So when this center is disrupted, You may experience this as a loss of intuitive protection or even modern survival as soul lessons. So, spiritual teaching suggests that a weakened amygdala disconnects us from our gut feeling, our first brain. I always say our gut is our first brain, but it disconnects us from our gut feelings, which makes it harder to sense dishonesty or negative energy. And spiritually, today's challenges through deceit and manipulation, they are seen as opportunities for your soul's growth. Learning discernment, setting boundaries, and trusting your inner guidance will help you evolve as a soul as you go through and gain the wisdom from these lessons. But evolutionarily, heightened intuition during fight or flight mode, it helps us survive by detecting predators or threats in our environments. So a few examples of this is just when a person is walking alone at night and they may feel this weird sense of danger when somebody's following them. This intuition is often based on those subtle cues such as footsteps or just slight changes in the environment. In high stakes situations, such as an emergency response, professionals rely on intuition to make those quick, rapid decisions. For example, a firefighter might sense that the building is about to collapse based on just subtle environmental changes and cues. Growing up in survival mode my entire life, as well as military training and my love for holistic wellness, has made a recipe for me to be a highly intuitional being. But my gifts go way deeper than just intuition. I have a deep connection with the divine source, with this field of information and universal consciousness that has helped me live my life. And it has helped me and been a crucial role in the way that I help others through their healing journeys. I have been an empath my entire life, but now that I finally have been able to put up those boundaries, know my own worth, and trust my own instincts and intuition, I have learned to use discernment while I'm speaking to other people, as well as when I'm speaking to and receiving information from the universal field. My life has been forever changed in the best of ways. I have a deep connection with God, with divine source, with the universe that I cherish and I honor very deeply. And looking back in my childhood, this energy has been with me and around me my entire life. It has honestly been the only constant and the only stability that I have ever had throughout my entire childhood years. As an adult, instead of pushing this energy away or pushing against it because that's what I was told to do, because God's not real, believing in any of that spiritual stuff is for crazy people, I no longer push it away, but I embrace it. And I've learned more about myself, more about other people through all of the shadow work that I've done. And I've learned more about other people on just such a deeper level. And Spirit has shown me things that were never in my view or in my perception before. And I now receive divine, beautiful downloads to help my clients move through the obstacles in their own lives with beautiful precision and confidence. And I never would have gotten this far without God, without the divine source, without the universe having my back. Listening to my intuition and giving guiding information to help others step into the best versions of themselves, it never would have crossed my mind. But God knew what he was doing. He was helping me with this divine plan the entire time, my whole life. I just didn't know yet. So I want to tell you guys a quick story of how the universe was preparing me my entire life. When you look back and you think about, what you wanted to do when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up? Do you remember what it was? You can go ahead and share it in the comments or wherever you can and let us know what it was that you aspired to be when you grew up. And if you even remember having that aspiration, let us know if it's what you ended up doing or did you change courses along the way. For me, I finally realized after a few years of doing energy healing that I am doing exactly what it is that I always wanted to do as a kid. And I didn't even realize it. As a kid in fourth grade, I had this friend that used to pay me 10 cents to give her advice. She always told me that I'm the only one who understands her, even though she was very well known. She was pretty popular. She had a lot of friends. She would always speak to me either during lunch in the lunch line or during our classes. And this happened just throughout the years as we got older. I would always tell her, you don't have to pay me, but she always insisted. And this is something that I actually struggle with today, charging my worth, because I feel everyone deserves to be able to have access to this healing. So I always have a hard time setting my prices and things like that. If I didn't have bills to pay and a family to take care of, I'd be doing this work for free. But that's just not how life works, unfortunately, at least at this moment. So my friend, her name was Annalise. She was just such a beautiful and vibrant woman. She always told me that I was her therapist and that she had to at least pay me 10 cents for my services, which I always thought was really funny because even when we were like older and things like that, she would always be coming up having her 10 cents and everything. But she was just always such a loving and giving person. She always had a smile and a laugh that would just light up the room. But she unfortunately passed away way too soon, along with three other of my friends in a very short amount of time. But I remember giving her the advice and helping her out with either her relationship issues or issues that she had going on at home, and her always just being so thankful to me for just listening to her and helping her out. Some days she would be coming over to my lunch table and knocking her 10 cents on the table. Okay, I've got a hard one and I really need help. So I would always just joke and say, step into my office, and we would just talk about it. Never in my life did I ever think that I would be doing something like that as a profession. I guess she saw something in me at the time that I just didn't. Because I always wondered, out of all these people in our school, why did she come over to me? I didn't understand it at the time. But I also remember as a child saying that I always wanted to be a teacher and that I always wanted to be a doctor as well. And I remember always going back and forth between the two as I got older. I was so torn between being a teacher and a doctor. And when it came to being a doctor, I was so torn between being a pediatrician or doing adult medicine. I just remember thinking, I just want to help as many people as I can. And I know this sounds extremely cheesy, but as my quote next to my picture in high school on my senior year picture, I had wrote, my role in life is to help people in need and be the best person I can be. And it's funny because I don't even remember saying that or writing that down, but you can see that this has been a trend and it has been something that has been on my heart my whole entire life. And I strive every single day to show up and be the best version of myself. But it turns out what I wanted to be as a child, I ended up being none of those things while also being all of those things at the same time. It is really funny how life works and how when you stay true to yourself and you stay on your path, where life will take you. And my life had taken me through some beautiful moments as well as some tough ones. And speaking of tough ones, let's dive into the phone call that completely ended a chapter in my life. So as I stated before, I had not spoken to my dad in about 4 years before we were forced to have another interaction. And this interaction started when my sister called me to tell me that my mom was sick and was going to the hospital. Me and one of my sisters instantly knew something was wrong. We had a strong sensation that we should go and see her and that it was most likely going to be the last time that we got to see my mother. We figured if everything was okay, great, our intuition was wrong, but we just knew it wouldn't be too long after that she would pass away. So we all talked about it. We went around and around on what we should do. Then I remember getting hit with this message and this realization that my mom was not going to make it out of the hospital. My denial had my intuition clouded a bit. And I remember I was walking near the track next to my home. I was on the phone with my sisters and my brother, and the message just came to me out of nowhere. And it was just overwhelming. Again, I was just still in denial until one of my sisters said, I just have a feeling she isn't going to make it. After I heard her confirm my same feelings, I couldn't run from this message. I couldn't hide and I couldn't push it off. So I agreed with my sister and I said, I think we all just need to go see her. We spent the rest of the night scrambling, looking at flights, trying to get everyone's ticket bought. We scraped up all the money so everyone could go and be there with her. We didn't want anyone to not be able to make it, especially me, because I had gotten that message and I knew that everyone had to be there. I kept being told everyone has to be there. Again, we basically said, if our intuition is wrong, great. But if it's not, we don't want to miss this and have this be a missed opportunity for all of us to be together one last time. We didn't care how much it was going to cost us. We just knew that we all had to be there. So once everyone was booked, it was about 1 a.m. and we were all going to bed. A few hours later, I was woken up with the news that my mom was being helivaced to Seattle. At this point, she was living in Alaska with my sister, but then she had to be helivaced to Seattle. Luckily, that's exactly where all of our layovers were. So I told them all to just not get on your connecting flight, and that when I was in the airport, I would work on renting a car and getting us a hotel. And all they had to worry about was getting on their plane and getting to Seattle. We were all able to fly into Seattle and visit my mom in the hospital. We unfortunately had an extremely hard time at the hospital. By the time we got there, my mom had already had a tube down her throat and she wasn't doing too good. She had congenital heart failure and an enlarged heart, pneumonia, dehydrated kidneys, a UTI, and they had to put a BiPAP mask on her to help her breathe. She had fluid in her lungs and all of her organs were severely dehydrated. She had also just gotten out of surgery and they hooked her up to the ECMO machine while keeping her sedated and paralyzed. When we got to the hospital, my mom was already sedated. We took turns going into her room to spend some time with her and talk to her. When we all arrived at the hospital, my dad just looked at us like, why are you guys all here? He pretty much said that we were acting like this was way worse than it was. So we simply said, we're here to see our mom. She's in the hospital. And if she ends up being fine, then we all came to visit her and make sure that she was okay. We don't see what the big deal is. The whole time that I was in the hospital, I tried to avoid having contact with my dad. But I was very cordial, and when he asked questions or didn't understand something, I would respond to him so he would understand what was going on. I even went out the first day that I got there to get my dad some snacks and some shower items so that he didn't have to leave the hospital and he could stay there with my mom. But we just kept our interactions very cordial, very short, and only when necessary. I even gave my dad a ride to and from his hotel to the hospital so he didn't have to worry about getting an Uber and spending money. The hospital started to discuss changing her heart valve and a bunch of other things. The hospital did an absolutely horrible job relaying information. It seemed as if nobody knew what was going on. Every time that we would ask specific questions, we would get the runaround, and nobody was telling us the full story of exactly what was going on with her. And they just kept saying that we had to wait and see what would happen and just play it by ear. My dad had given us conflicting information as what the nurses were saying, so we're just trying to piece everything together. But my sister had access to my mom's MyChart, and the information that the nurse kept giving us did not correlate with the results that were showing in her MyChart. So this just left all of us extremely confused because the chart was saying one thing and the doctors and nurses were telling us a different thing. My mom had to be put on life support. And again, we weren't getting any answers to any of our questions. So I'm not sure if my dad just told the nurses to just keep us out of the loop and just tell him what's going on or what exactly was going on. But for some reason, we were looking at the mind chart and everything that everyone was telling us, meaning me and my siblings, it completely did not align with anything that was going on with her chart. And it finally got to the point where we told the doctors that we would like to have a sit down and go over everything from start to finish to where we are now of what happened and what is exactly going on and what our next steps moving forward is going to be. The doctor agreed to sit down with us all and he explained everything. And you could tell that he was holding back. So we just kept saying, can you please be 100% honest with us? Like, we can handle it because we keep looking at the my chart. We see the result and what you guys keep telling us is not adding up. So he did say that my mom's condition was severe and that they were taking everything one step and one day at a time. The doctor said that at the Alaska hospital, she had pneumonia, congestive heart failure, kidney failure. Her valve got worse over time and was working overtime, which resulted in backflow and blood into her lungs, which had spiraled into what she's dealing with now, why she had to be on life support and everything. He said that the ECMO is working her lungs and that we would have to transition her all in a few weeks. He said nothing was responding due to how sick she was. He said neurologically, she was just not getting enough oxygen and that they were talking to the medical team to see how they could fix the valve in her heart. When we got there in the morning, she did have blood coming out of her mouth, and the nurse and the doctor said it was possibly the tubes that were putting pressure on her mouth. And when they did the echocardiogram, it could have cut her mouth and was causing irritation. He said in the short term, they were trying to continue to get her off of the sedation medication and see what her body responded to. He said that morning that she was not highly medicated and she was using less medical support. All of the nurses and all of the doctors were sure that my mom was going to be okay, or at least that's what they kept trying to portray to us. We just kept hearing, she's doing so well, she's fighting, she's doing such a great job, all these things. We were just waiting for her to do a little bit better so that she could have her open heart surgery. One of my sisters had to be dropped off a day prior to everyone else because she was pregnant and she needed to go home. So she had left that Sunday night and got home that Monday morning. And then I had to drop off my other sister. While we were at the hospital, my mom kept having these repetitive movements and doing the same thing over and over again. So we thought that she was having a stroke. But the nurses assured us that she was in fact not having a stroke and that there is no sign of her having a stroke. So we had requested over and over again for them to do an EEG that Monday morning. We finally got the results that night and they told us that the EEG results had no abnormal findings and no seizure-like activity. We got these results around 6 p.m. Monday night, so it was a relief. And then I had dropped off my brother at the airport later that night. My sister, who had access to my mom's my chart, was confused because on the my chart, it was showing that my mom was having seizures. And we kept reading the results and we just didn't understand because it said that she was having seizures on the my chart. The doctors had said that everything came back fine. So we were extremely confused. Then my other sister and I were going to be flying out that next day on Tuesday. So at this point, it was just me, my sister, my dad, still at the hospital. I had already checked out of my hotel because I was just going to spend the rest of the night in the hospital with my mom. But my sister wanted to get some rest, and she was going to stay with my dad at his hotel that night. I told her that I would come pick her up in the morning, but she had asked and basically begged me to stay with her at my dad's hotel. I did not want to, but she didn't want to be alone. So I said, okay, I will come and I will do some laundry and then we will just leave first thing in the morning. As I was doing my laundry, my dad was in the common room near the laundry room. My sister and I sat at the table as my dad was on his iPad and my sister and my dad were conversing. My dad tried to talk to me during this time, but I gave very short, quick answers because I did not feel comfortable speaking to him. But I tried to stay as cordial as I could for my sister. As we were all sitting there, my dad got a phone call from the hospital. It turned out that the EEG determined that she actually was having multiple strokes and that she had bleeding in her brain and that there was nothing left that they could do. She was no longer eligible for open heart surgery, and they told us that we would have to make a decision whether or not to take her off of life support. The nurse was on speakerphone, so me and my sister heard everything, and we just began crying. After my dad had hung up the phone with the nurse, he looked straight at me and said, "Your mom didn't even know that you loved her." And I said, "Excuse me?" Because I'm over here in my emotions, just hearing that I have to take my mom off of life support after everyone assured me that she'd be perfectly okay. And now I have to cope with the decision that I have to take my mom off of life support. So I just said, "Excuse me?" Because my dad had no idea the relationship that I had with my mom. He didn't know that for years after the situation that happened in Texas between me and my mom and me putting her in jail, that my mom and I made up and we began talking again and we moved on from that situation that had happened in Texas. He had no idea that my mom supported my business, that I would pull cards for her and I FaceTimed with her on the phone and she bought things from my shop and that we would text each other and communicate. So he had no idea what my relationship with my mother was. Yet, because he had just got devastating news and didn't know how to handle it emotionally, I became his punching bag once again. So I said, "Excuse me? You have no idea what kind of relationship I had with my mom." Where he replied with, "Your mom didn't even know that you loved her and you kept your kids from us," and just started digging in with all of these lies and accusations. So I got loud and I stood up for myself, but he just kept coming at me. And for the first time in my life, my older sister stepped up for me. She had told my dad that this was not the time nor the place to be having this kind of a discussion. My dad continued to come at me, and again, my sister shut him down. To be honest, I was in such complete shock and disbelief that my sister, for the first time, was on my side. She had never stepped up for me like this before, especially when it came to my dad. I was so grateful that she had stepped in and shut him down. She talked him out of his frantic accusations and hurtful words towards me. And honestly, I was so proud of her. Even though she was hurting just as bad as I was, she was able to de-escalate the situation and she stepped up for me. She was on my side. I finished up my laundry and I uncomfortably went to bed in the same room as my father. The next morning, we were all going to go up to the hospital together to see my mom for the last time. Because my mom never would have wanted to live in that state and just be on life support. In fact, she never even wanted to have a tube down her throat, but my dad convinced her that it would be best. Even though that is the way that her mother, my mama, my grandmother, had passed away as well. She had a tube down her throat and had multiple seizures. And my mom always said, "I do not want to have a tube down my throat. If I'm ever unconscious, do not let them put a tube down my throat." But my dad convinced my mom it was the only way to help her. So the next morning, my sister and I, we pack up all of our things. We're getting ready to go to the hospital. And we put everything into my rental car and we're waiting for my dad to finish getting showered so he can come with us. He tells me and my sister to just go ahead without him and that he will meet us up there. So my sister and I, we go to see my mom. We have some final moments with my mom around 9 o'clock in the morning. And my sister keeps texting my dad to figure out where he was. Around 11 o'clock, he was still not up at the hospital, even though he said he would be there right after us. My one sister said that he was probably just stalling on purpose because it's a big decision to make to have her taken off of life support, which we all agreed at the time. But it was revealed to me the real reason why he was stalling. We'll go over that here in just a moment. But my dad finally shows up right as my sister and I are getting ready to leave the hospital to go to the airport. I personally believe that my dad was stalling because he knew what time that me and my sister had to be at the airport to leave. And he wanted to do everything by himself without us there. So my sister and I gather our things to leave. We say our last goodbyes to my mom, and my sister gives my dad a hug. And I give my dad a hug, and I tell him that I love him. And then me and my sister, we head off to the airport. I dropped off my sister at the airport, and then I had to go downtown to drop off my rental car. And at this point, I cannot hold my tears back anymore. I turn in my rental car, and I just start bawling my eyes out. The woman at the desk asked if I was okay, so I told her, no, not really. My mom is going to be taken off of life support today. And she just was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, there's nothing you can do about it. And I was just angry. I was hurt. I just needed to just go to the airport and be by myself. So I called an Uber and they dropped me off at the airport. My sisters and my brother kept asking, have we heard anything from my dad? But he just wasn't messaging anyone or letting anyone know what was going on. My spiritual team kept telling me the same message over and over again as I was going through security and getting to the airport and everything. They just kept saying, pay attention for the signs, pay attention to the signs. And I just remember thinking, pay attention. I can barely hold myself together right now. But I told my sisters and my brother that I just kept hearing, pay attention for the signs. And I said that I think my mom's going to be showing us all what her sign is for each of us. Some people have signs for their past loved ones, such as like a butterfly or a dragonfly and things like that. So I told them, look out for the signs as well. My dad started to post things on Facebook like, I never thought I would be sitting alone in a hospital room waiting for my life to pass. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you to my children and all these things. And in my mind, I'm just like, how are you able to stay this calm and put things on Facebook when you're about to take my mom off of life support? I remember sitting in the airport just completely numb and trying not to cry. Right before I was about to board my flight, my siblings FaceTimed me because my dad was having all the tubes and everything taken out of my mom's mouth so he can finally take her off of life support. I couldn't be on FaceTime to watch my mom take her last breath. And even though I was angry that I was not able to FaceTime and be there with my brother and sisters, I kept getting this overwhelming feeling that it was okay. I kept feeling my mom around me, and I kept hearing, you're not supposed to be on the FaceTime with them when this happens. So I was even more angry because I wasn't sure at the time if my dad just waited until he knew that I was going to be on the flight to finally take her off of life support. So I was kept out of the loop, and he made it so that I couldn't be there on the phone with my mom as she was taking her last breath, or that this was all part of a divine plan. Later on, I did get the message that, yes, that's exactly what my dad was doing. He was waiting to take me out of it so I didn't get to experience that with my mom. But I trust God and I trust the universe. So I just told my sisters and my brother that I couldn't be on FaceTime anymore and that we're about to take off, and then I would let them know when I landed. So luckily, I had the window seat, so I kept looking outside, keeping my body towards the window as the tears were running down my face. I just kept feeling this overwhelming sensation of not being alone, and just like angels were hugging me and surrounding me. As I was flying and looking out the window, I had seen the most incredible light show that I had ever seen on an airplane. And I knew that was my mom. And I knew that my mom was with me. The sun had a full rainbow that completely surrounded it. A huge, beautiful circle of all the colors. And then, as the flight continued, the sunset created this beautiful, luminous light that radiated on the horizon with vibrant red, orange, yellow, blues, purples, and the stars were so bright. It was such an incredible experience that I can't even fully describe or to put into words. But I knew that my mom was with me. And I knew that she was there with me the entire time as I was watching this beautiful transition from day to night happen. I knew that we were just sitting there watching the sun go down together. This was definitely an experience that I will remember for the rest of my life. The beauty, the signs, the feelings, the energy, it was all just so perfect and beautiful. After I had landed, my brother and sister had told me how they were all on FaceTime and they all got to watch my mom take her last breath and all of these things. But nothing will ever compare to this amazing experience that me and my mom had together during that flight. I then flew into Wyoming. I spent the night at my house, and then the next morning, my husband had to drop me off at the airport once again, except this time, instead of helping one life transition out of this world, I was helping bring a new life into the world. Just 3 days after I lost my mom, I helped deliver a beautiful, healthy baby boy into my family. It was definitely a week filled with intense emotions, a huge sign from the universe around the lessons of death and rebirth. That week opened up so many experiences as well as lessons for my life. And in a way, it was almost biblical. Death and rebirth within 3 days. What a powerful message and an incredible life experience. Now, I know many of you are probably wondering why I gave my dad a hug and I said I loved him after everything that he's done to me and after everything that we've been through. But I still do love my dad. And I want him to know that I do still love him. But I also know that I have to keep up my boundary until he's willing and able to take responsibility for his life and to heal himself. It's like when you burn yourself on a stove. You're going to learn your lesson, even if it takes burning yourself multiple times, until you start paying attention more as you're cooking. So you put a protective boundary and barrier around your hand, like an oven mitt. And until the stove no longer burns you, you're going to have to wear the oven mitt when you deal with it. Now, I also know that throughout all of my stories, my childhood, my experiences, again, even though they were not told to the full capacity and that you guys only had the slightest, teeniest, tiniest taste of the reality of my life, you may be super angry with all of the people who have done those horrible things to me, or even mad at me for the ways that I responded and handled my situations. And you're probably going to be even more mad when I tell you that I have forgiven all of them, even myself. You must understand, I love my dad, but I also hate his actions. I was raised under this illusion, but also had the intuition to know better. I was torn between everything that I was taught and these spiritual downloads that my dad told me were schizophrenic episodes. But I still love him. I still see him at a soul level. I know that he had things he needed to heal from, that he didn't take responsibility for. And that's okay. Not everyone is going to make it through the healing. Not everybody learns the lessons and moves forward. Or in the spiritual world, they say graduate. But that's on him. It's not my responsibility to make sure that he learns those lessons and grows. I still love my mom after what she has done to me. So much has been revealed to me that my mom did try her hardest. But when you are fighting your whole life and you don't leave the situation or the people who are holding you underwater, you finally stop fighting and you give up. That's why my mom had told me that she was okay with dying and she was just waiting for it to happen. I always just thought it was just a deep depressive state, but I didn't understand what led her there. This is a thing called learned helplessness. And learned helplessness is just a psychological condition that occurs when a person has endured persistent adversity or trauma, and they begin to believe that they are powerless to change their situation. And this belief can emerge after repeated exposure to uncontrollable and aversive events, such as ongoing abuse. Over time, the individual may cease attempting to escape or resist their abuser because they feel that their efforts are futile. The individual feels that they have no control over the outcome of their situation, just leading them to be very passive. After numerous failed attempts to change their circumstances, the victim may stop trying entirely, believing that nothing they do will ever make a difference. The constant exposure to the trauma can lead to emotional numbness, where the person feels detached or disconnected from their emotions and surroundings. This is where my mom's depression came in. The feelings of helplessness can contribute to those mental health issues, such as depression and anxiety, really further diminishing the individual's motivation to act or to heal. And victims may then internalize the abuse, believing that they are the problem, that they are somehow responsible for their situation, or even worse, that they deserve it. And this can leave the victim feeling as if there's just no way out, just like my mom felt. Victims, they're not going to seek assistance because they believe it's not going to lead to any meaningful change because they've tried it in the past, whether going through authorities or the law, nothing happened. The ongoing presence of stress without a perceived escape route for relief can lead to chronic health issues. And past experiences of the helplessness can hinder the ability to form healthy relationships in the future because the trust and autonomy has been compromised. So you're never going to trust another person or want to be in a relationship as you move forward. So you just had this big, intense, numb, depressive feeling as you're moving through life. And this is exactly how my mom had passed away. She had separated herself and closed off everybody and was just alone. My mom died of heart issues. And in the spiritual realm, you can understand why. You know, in a way, you can say that she died of a broken heart. Her soul and her joy were ripped away from her slowly throughout her life until she finally gave in. And honestly, I am just so sorry that I didn't heal on a deeper level or fast enough to help my mom through it. I couldn't see it back then. I do have some beautiful memories from my past, like my mom teaching us dances for talent shows, cooking with her, and making holidays special. My early years with my mom were so good. She was always so happy and had a beautiful smile. When I look back and remember her in her younger days, when she was full of life and fire and excitement and joy. But again, after a while of your soul being completely crushed and your joy being taken from you day after day, where you begin losing yourself and giving up control and falling into this deep, numbing, depressional state because everything that you've tried, all the help that you've tried to get, no one can help you. You can't even help yourself, especially when the person who is doing all of this to you is a narcissist, a person who is drawn to empathetic and compassionate people for their sweet, understanding, and forgiving nature so they can exploit their kindness. Someone who seeks out someone with a low self-esteem so they can manipulate them. Someone who was extremely selfless and who always wanted to help everyone else around them, who put others' needs ahead of their own, someone who just wanted to be liked and loved and accepted, a person who valued loyalty and commitment and believed the lies of it's not going to happen again, I'm going to change. Someone who was inexperienced and very young. My mom was only 16 when she had her first child. My dad was 5 years older than my mom, and they met when my mom was still in high school. So it's no wonder my mom's life played out the way that it did. Again, I'm so sorry for not seeing it all and being able to help her through it. It really is so hard to see other people around you drowning when you are underwater yourself. A whole, vibrant life stripped away and turned into something so far from her authentic being. Again, I still love my mom more now that she's gone and that these truths have finally been revealed to me. I actually admire her for not taking her own life many years ago, for everything that she has been through. I admire her courage to stick it out and to stay instead of putting that pain onto her children. She was so strong as she persevered through the demons that were thrown her way. And even after all of this, I still wanted to help my dad. And of course, I still wanted to help my family. I was engraved with the idea of keeping up with the facade of having a perfect family image. But sometimes people refuse the help that you give. They would rather be the victim and continue their victimization. They continue to put the blame on you for their failures. You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink. And again, everyone is responsible for their own healing. But we must forgive people for their actions towards us, just as we should forgive ourselves for allowing those actions to come into our space. Yes, sometimes we couldn't help it. We were children, we were brainwashed, we were conditioned. But it is our jobs as adults to take control of our lives, our health, our well-being, do the healing, and move forward. Create those boundaries and determine who you are and who you want to be to bridge the gap between those two people and those two destinies. When it comes to my mom, my dad, my siblings, my supervisors, coworkers, and everyone else who tried to hold me back or sabotage me, I don't hold anything against them. I do forgive them truly in my heart because I know that they are just human, because humans make mistakes, because I know that I may have done something terribly out of character, like having the talk with all these female airmen who came into my shop. I didn't know how my actions or words were going to affect them. I still don't. maybe they affect me more than they do affect them, but I was still in a hurt and wounded state. So I did not know the severity of my actions. But I do understand now that I was unaware then, completely unpresent, not fully embodied, not in my full capacity, for I knew not what I should have done. That's why they say ignorance is bliss. When all you have to do is worry about yourself and your own feelings and don't think of how things affect other people, life is easy. You don't care about hurting others or what they think. It's only when your conscience grows and you become aware that ignorant bliss is taken away. Now, for those who had ill intent in my life, I forgive them as well because I know that their past shaped them and they were just too emotionally immature and just weren't ready to take responsibility for themselves, their actions, and do their healing. Like my parents. I know that they didn't understand me because they didn't have the capacity to. No one taught them those skills. That's that generational curse that everyone is talking about. It's not so much as a spell per se, how it's perceived in the world right now. It's generations of people refusing to heal. So they continue the cycle of hurting people, usually the people that they love. For example, my parents were most likely emotionally unavailable because their parents, my grandparents, were emotionally unavailable to them. And they loved the way their parents did and mirrored their parents. Again, generational trauma and curses. They were just following the norms of the time, raising me and my siblings through their own struggles, their own worries, their own pains and fears, and just doing the best that they could with what they had. Now, when it comes to my siblings, I forgive them too because we were all trying to survive. We were all in survival mode. We were all raised in a violent environment where we were pit against each other. What we were taught is what we knew. It's how we were conditioned. We all fought for the limited love that was available. And until we were older and until we had life experiences outside of that household, we thought that this was the only way of life. Now that we have stepped back and healed through our trauma bonding, we were able to heal on such a deep level that helped us trust and uplift each other, as well as piece together and validate many of the events that had occurred in our lives. We could piece together the truths. And for those who don't know what trauma bonding is, it is just the deep emotional attachment that develops between an individual and their abuser during a cycle of abuse. The bond is often described by a pattern of intense emotional highs and lows, where periods of affection or reprieve from abuse are interspersed with episodes of abuse or manipulation. These bonds can make it extremely difficult for the victim to leave the abusive relationship, despite the negative impact it has on their well-being. Some characteristics of a trauma bond are intermittent reinforcement, emotional dependency, cognitive dissonance, and isolation. So the abuser alternates between violence, manipulation, or neglect in periods of kindness and affection, creating a cycle that reinforces the bond. The victim may become emotionally dependent on the abuser, often feeling like they cannot survive or function without them, creating that emotional dependency. Victims may experience conflicting feelings and thoughts about the abuser, leading to confusion and self-doubt. And abusers may isolate their victims from friends and family to increase the dependency and control. This can have an intense impact on their victims. Trauma bonding can also lead to long-lasting psychological effects, including low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, and difficulty trusting other people. Victims may believe that they deserve the abuse or that they cannot do better than the current relationship. The stress and fear associated with the abusive relationship can contribute to mental health issues. After experiencing all the betrayal and manipulation, Victims may struggle to trust other people in future relationships. Throughout all of our experiences, my siblings and I have finally found a way out to heal and to help each other heal from all the trauma that we have experienced. We share ways that we cope around second guessing ourselves, our body dysmorphia, our intense self worth issues, and how we overcome our limited beliefs and mental health blocks every single day. We provide each other with tools to help us overcome obstacles, and we provide constructive criticism to each other when we are faced with self sabotaging circumstances and our self imposed restrictions. We have learned to trust each other and build each other up when our whole lives we were being torn down. We are never judgmental towards each other, and we strive to build each other up, never tearing down. We no longer get jealous or vengeful towards each other because we know we no longer have to compete for love. I want to provide some spiritual and scientific evidence here of this as well. So, we just discussed trauma bonding, but scientifically, trauma bonding often results in a situation where siblings who had experienced trauma together tend to form intense emotional bonds, but these can be fraught with competition and maladaptive patterns. Some ways that this can show up is through excessive protectiveness of the other siblings, or intense competition or rivalry, and even sometimes a significant emotional response to a sibling's pain or them being upset. When parental love is perceived as scarce, especially in dysfunctional or narcissistic families, siblings may feel compelled to compete for affection, approval, and validation. And this rivalry can lead to low self-esteem, emotional insecurity, and difficulties in adult relationships. Spiritually, many teachings say that siblings choose each other before birth to work through karmic lessons, often involving competition, jealousy, or abandonment. And this competition or sibling rivalry is seen as a catalyst for growth, helping each soul learn self-worth, boundaries, and unconditional love. This spiritual growth involves recognizing these patterns, healing old wounds, and choosing compassion over competition to help break the cycles. Siblings can choose to heal and transform these dynamics through their awareness and through forgiveness. Now, when it comes to competing for the scarce amount of love that was provided, narcissistic parents often assign rigid family roles such as scapegoat, the golden child, and they foster competition to maintain control. These parents may undermine their children's achievements out of jealousy or fear of being outshined, perpetuating intergenerational competition and psychological harm, just like my dad did between me and my sister with our sports, with school, and things like that. And he would never tell us that we were doing good. He would always criticize the tiniest mess ups that we did. While this leaves children of narcissistic parents at a higher risk for anxiety, depression, and difficulties in forming healthy relationships, basically exactly how me and my siblings walked through our early adulthood years, the parental sabotage is driven by the need for superiority and control. The sibling rivalry is exacerbated by parental favoritism and emotional neglect. And the long-term psychological harm that results is an increased risk of mental health issues and maladaptive coping, leaning on drugs or alcohol, or having avoidant behavior and hiding your true feelings from other people rather than asserting your own opinions and emotions. Narcissism is seen as a manifestation of the ego and a disconnection from your higher self, leading to jealousy and sabotage. Sabotage is viewed as an unconscious attempt to maintain energetic dominance within the family system. Spiritual growth involves breaking free from these patterns, again, through self-love, boundaries, and forgiveness. So the energy of narcissism is ego-driven, rooted in spiritual lack and need for external validation. The energy of jealousy is fear-based. It reflects a scarcity mindset and separation from the divine source and from divine unconditional love. The energy behind sabotage is energetic competition, projection of wounds, and an attempt to maintain dominance. When you walk the path of healing, you reclaim your self-worth. You learn how to set boundaries, and you're able to connect to a higher source that's filled with love. So that competition is no longer required. Modern neuroscience and spiritual traditions, they both affirm that our deepest emotional and relational challenges, whether they're rooted in brain function, family trauma, or spiritual contracts, are opportunities for growth and healing. The amygdala, once essential for physical survival, now helps us navigate complex social threats. Sibling rivalry and parental sabotage, while painful, can be understood as both psychological patterns and spiritual lessons, inviting us to break cycles, reclaim our self-worth, and foster a more authentic connection with ourselves and with Source. When it comes to people being jealous of other people's success, they often try to sabotage it in any way that they know how to. And sometimes this can be conscious and sometimes this is unconscious. But in my case, I know that it's never about me. It's always about other people's insecurities. When someone is doing better, it forces the people around them to look at themselves and compare. It's just human nature. It's how we're wired. And when someone feels inadequate or they feel like they need to work harder to compete with you, they don't want to do the work. They will criticize you, talk behind your back, and tell you that you shouldn't go for your dreams or even place their fears onto you so that you don't follow through with your desires. So it doesn't force them to get out of their comfort zone. People like being comfortable. Change is uncomfortable. And when you're poking at someone to do better and they would rather stay stagnant than see you succeed, they will do anything to pull you back down to their level and stand in your way. Again, sometimes this is conscious, sometimes it's not. And this is the same thing with narcissistic parents. They want to live through their children's achievements, but they don't want their child to accomplish more than they did. They don't want to feel inferior to their child, which is just wild to me. I hope that my children surpass me tenfold. But anyways, I really hope that over these past 6 episodes, you were able to get a little glimpse of where it is that I came from so that you don't have to feel like you need to go on this journey alone. I hope that you can understand that it doesn't matter where you are in life. It could be amazing. It could be that you're down in a rut, but there's always space for you to take responsibility for your life and change it in a way that aligns with you and your highest good. Whether that's putting up firm boundaries with the ones that you love and choosing yourself for maybe the first time in your life, or simply just making a decision to do the healing so your children don't have to go through the same cycles and patterns that you went through. To end those cyclic patterns, those generational curses. I hope that my story encourages you to take a stand in your own life and start walking the path that makes you feel whole. Whether you have support or if people think you're crazy, do what feels aligned to you. You are never put on this earth to please the people around you and to make sure that they are living their life at their highest level. You are not here to be their servant and to regulate their emotions for them. You are not here to be subservient to anyone. You are here to be abundant and experience life. And abundance can look so different to everybody. To some, it's money, it's finances. To others, it's having a happy, healthy family and a home and go on vacations or just doing things with people that you love. But whatever abundance means to you, I hope that you can look inside of you and know that you are worth it. And then start taking the steps to accept it in your life. And I hope that you start believing so you can start receiving. So, this is all that I have for you guys on my life. And if you want to learn how to move forward and make a difference in your own life, go ahead, visit my website. It's intonikki.com. You can book a session with me, or you can join my private Facebook group page, Journey of the Soul Support Group, or simply download my free app. It has various guided meditations and videos that can help you start to live your life more abundantly aligned. Next week, we're going to be diving into how we can move forward in our lives. Over the next few episodes, I'm going to be going into detail and giving helpful tools to help you understand energy and start creating a path to your healing. Again, I want to thank you all for joining me along my journey, and I hope that even if my story touches one person and it helps one person heal, that I have done the job that my spiritual team said that I should do, helping one soul at a time awaken, align, and ascend. Until next time, everybody, have a wonderful, beautiful day. I love you all.